She couldn't swim, and she was pushed. The black niece saw everything. In luxurious Atlanta, the powerful Whitmore family hides behind its fortune a succession of secrets and tensions. Margaret, the respected but rigid matriarch, lives to preserve the prestige of the family name, while Olivia, her ambitious daughter-in-law, does everything she can to secure power and influence. At the center of this empire, marked by tradition, is Naomi, the adopted niece who became a successful businesswoman, but was never fully accepted as part of the family. When an unexpected event during a party exposes silent rivalries, intrigues, and hidden truths, the family's balance begins to fall apart. Amid accusations, manipulations, and painful revelations, Naomi will have her courage and reputation tested to the limit, and what is decided from that point on will forever change the fate of the Whitmores. Before we dive into this emotional and twist-filled story, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I love knowing how far our stories are reaching. And if you're into intense plots about love, resilience, and family, make sure you subscribe to the channel. That way, you won't miss a single episode, and you'll help this space grow and bring more stories to you. The jazz orchestra filled the air with a smooth standard as the camera glided through the Whitmore mansion in Atlanta, sparkling with crystal, silver, and lit-up gardens. It was the night celebrating Daniel and Olivia's wedding anniversary, a high society event with an exclusive guest list, alert photographers, and champagne flutes circling on silver trays. The outdoor pool, lit by underwater lights, formed a glowing rectangle at the heart of the courtyard. Daniel, 40, white, tall, with tired eyes despite his rehearsed smile, greeted investors in his impeccable navy suit. "Let's keep the press away from the pool area," he murmured to an aide before turning to his wife. Olivia, 36, white, in a cream silk gown and elegant bun, assessed the evening like someone managing an empire. "It's almost perfect, Daniel. We just need to make sure your mother understands this party is ours." Margaret, the 65-year-old matriarch, silver hair in waves and a pearl necklace, moved with the authority of someone carrying decades of tradition. "It's good to see some names stand the test of time," she told a guest, then added to herself, "just like certain traditions." Across the way, Naomi, 34, black, poised in her minimalist black dress, watched from a distance. Founder of a respected tech company, her presence was marked by serenity and sharp eyes. To a curious journalist, she replied with strategic coldness, "Family is a commitment, even when it's complicated." Tension rose when Margaret and Olivia crossed paths in a side hallway. Their polished words hid sharp blades. "You've organized a lovely celebration, Olivia, but some family matters aren't solved with flowers and photographers," Margaret said. The daughter-in-law smiled but replied firmly, "Now it's my turn to decide the future of the hotels." The clash continued up to the glass door leading to the garden, where music and laughter echoed once again. Naomi, from a distance, noticed the taut line between the two. Margaret was called over by a guest for a photo near the pool, and Olivia appeared beside her with an apparently delicate gesture. "Careful, it's slippery," she said, touching her arm. The touch, prolonged and barely noticeable, was enough. The matriarch's heel slipped on the wet surface, and her body fell into the lit water, prompting gasps and camera flashes from the guests. "Oh my God, someone help!" Olivia cried theatrically as security guards dove in. Daniel ran over in a panic, covering his soaked mother with his own jacket. Naomi knelt by the edge, reaching out to the guard, pulling her out. "Breathe slowly," she said firmly, her eyes fixed on Olivia. She had seen it. She saw the subtle push and the perfectly timed moment when everyone's attention was on Daniel. The surface of the pool soon settled again, as if nothing had happened. But Naomi knew that water hid an invisible crack capable of forever dividing the Whitmore family's fate. The hallway leading from the pool back into the mansion was filled with hurried steps and hushed voices. Daniel guided his mother with the jacket over her shoulders, her formal clothes clinging to her skin. Naomi walked nearby, never taking her eyes off Olivia. The daughter-in-law followed 2 steps behind, impeccable, as if the chaos didn't touch her. When Naomi leaned in to hold Margaret's arm, Olivia stepped forward and, without touching, blocked her with her own body, polite and sharp in the gesture. "Let me, Naomi." "The medical team is already on the way." Naomi stepped back half a pace, holding back the impulse. The image of Olivia's hand on Margaret's elbow was crystal clear, clearer than the blue light of the pool. A security guard cleared the way to the winter room, where the gray linen-covered walls muffled all noise. Margaret sat on the sofa, trembling slightly. "It was just a slip," she insisted, chin lifted, voice lower than she would have liked. "We should call a doctor, Mom," Daniel said, kneeling in front of her. "Just to be safe." "It's already taken care of," Olivia added, smiling at an aide. "Hot water and towels, please. And let's keep the press outside. No invasive photos." Naomi observed the precision of Olivia's orders, the way people obeyed her like she was the night's choreographer. A waiter with discreet gloves brought ginger and honey tea. "Thank you," Margaret said, accepting the cup without looking anyone in the eye, as if maintaining protocol was her last line of defense. "Did you see when she fell?" Daniel asked, turning to Naomi. His gaze was looking for something solid. Naomi felt the weight of the question. Her chest tightened, like in those early interviews where she had to prove she belonged. "I was nearby," she said, measuring each syllable. "I saw the floor was wet." The sentence came out with a caution she recognized as self-protection. She didn't lie. She just didn't tell. Olivia tilted her head, her bun still perfect. "Such a shame about the fountain floor being splashed. We'll get maintenance to take care of it." Her gaze landed on Naomi. Precisely. "No one wants a family night turning into a circus." "A circus is when the truth loses its stage," Naomi replied quietly, firm enough that only Olivia could hear. The private medical team arrived discreetly. They checked her vitals, pressure, and breathing. The diagnosis was fright and a minor shoulder impact. "I recommend rest, Mrs. Whitmore," said the doctor, a middle-aged woman with impeccable posture. No interviews today. People resumed circulating, now with the reverence one has in a museum. The party didn't end, it just shifted in tone. Outside, the orchestra tried to resume a familiar standard, and the guests' murmurs turned into polite small talk. Naomi stepped into a side room where a window looked out onto the patio. The glass framed the pool like a calm, indifferent rectangle. She crossed her arms, hugging herself, and breathed slowly. Her phone vibrated. It was a message from the majority partner of her new educational fund. "Everything okay? Saw a report there was an incident in your family." Naomi replied briefly, assuring things were under control. Another notification popped up, a business journalist known for relentless scoops. Sources say there was a fight between the Whitmore women. True. She locked the screen. She wouldn't give anything away in a message. "Are you okay?" Daniel's voice came softly from the doorway. He had swapped his tie for a tired expression. "Mom insists it was an accident. I don't know what to think." "She'll recover," Naomi said, She's proud. That's how she handles her falls. Thanks for helping. Daniel hesitated. Did you see anything else? Naomi looked at her adoptive brother for a long second. She saw the boy from boarding school who used to write Christmas cards to all the hotel staff. She also saw the CEO who had learned to calculate risk. I saw a lot of people watching you during the toast, she said. And that kind of attention always blinds. Daniel nodded, like someone accepting a riddle because they don't have the strength to solve it that night. I'll make sure she rests. Can you stay a little longer? Your presence always brings calm. Of course, Naomi replied, and only after he left did she feel the weight of that sentence. Her presence always brings calm, except when telling the truth sets everything on fire. She headed toward the service wing, where foot traffic was lighter and the air smelled of fresh coffee. She found Paul, the head of security, a middle-aged man with solid arms and a scruffy beard. Paul, I need something technical, she said, directly. Were the pool area cameras active? Yes, Miss Carter, he answered, automatically respectful of her reputation outside the family. But we're following privacy protocol, Mrs. Ma. Olivia requested the footage be withheld until further notice. Privacy for whom? Naomi asked, without raising her voice. My aunt or the event? I can't say, ma'am, he deflected, but the discomfort was clear. I understand. Naomi leaned in slightly, just enough to keep her voice from carrying. If something happens to Margaret because of a lack of clarity, those responsible will be held accountable. You know that? Paul swallowed hard, and she noticed cracks forming in the armor of the night. On her way back to the main hall, Naomi passed Sophia, a young staff member in charge of the outdoor bar, Latina, big, alert eyes, and a functional black dress, Miss Carter, Sophia whispered. I'm sorry to bother you. I was collecting glasses near the pool when it happened. You saw it too, didn't you? The question came tinged with fear. Naomi took a deep breath. What did you see, Sophia? I thought it was just a helping hand, but the way the hand squeezed, I don't know if I should say anything. I need this job. Sophia's fingers were trembling. You're not going to lose anything. And don't speak to anyone else about this for now. Naomi scribbled a number and handed her a card. Be careful. You're not alone. As she turned the hallway corner, she came face to face with Olivia. The daughter-in-law was flawless, as if she hadn't taken a single hurried step all evening, and her platinum wedding ring caught the overhead lights with every movement. The household appreciates how you handled everything, Naomi, she said with polite warmth. It's impressive how you adapt to any room. Adaptation is survival, Naomi replied. Some of us weren't born owning the room. Olivia stepped forward, closing the space. You know how the South works. Big families, hungry press, contracts on the line. Sometimes, staying quiet is an act of love. Sometimes, staying quiet is complicity. Naomi shot back. And sometimes, speaking destroys the innocent, Olivia whispered, lowering her eyelids like confessing something intimate. Your company is admirable. It would be a shame to see your name dragged into a public misunderstanding. A greater shame is watching the truth drown in fear, Naomi said, and the sentence hung in the air, vibrating like the final note of a saxophone. As Olivia walked away, Naomi noticed a tiny detail. On the floor near the frame of the glass door leading to the garden was a tiny metal clasp, the kind that holds delicate bracelets. It shone like a forgotten speck of silver. She bent down, picked it up, and slipped it into her dress pocket. In her memory, an image, Olivia's wrist adorned with a thin chain just before the toast, The chain was no longer there. Her phone vibrated again, an unknown number. Naomi opened the message. It was a shaky video, filmed from a low angle, clearly by someone on the team collecting glasses. The footage showed Margaret's profile at the edge of the pool, Olivia's hand approaching her elbow, the subtle gesture, and the loss of balance. The sound of the water drowned out the rest, but the essential moment was there. The message included a single line, "Don't say it was me." Naomi clenched the phone in her palm. Her heart raced, not with panic, but with recognition. She wasn't alone, but any move would come at a price. She looked up at the window. The pool looked calm, like a witness refusing to testify. Naomi took a steady breath. "I won't stay silent forever," she murmured to herself, testing the strength of that promise. Behind her, a door opened. Daniel appeared, tie in hand, his voice tired. "She's better. She's going up to rest. Can we wrap the night quietly?" He was seeking a truce. "For now, we can," Naomi replied, slipping the phone into her pocket and brushing the metal clasp lightly with her fingertips. "But tomorrow, the family will need to talk." The next morning, the Whitmore mansion was quiet, but not at peace. Margaret remained in her room, wrapped in a light blue silk robe, sitting at her vanity in front of an antique mirror. The reflection showed a 65-year-old woman with silver hair still damp from the night before, pale skin etched with tension. The pearl necklace, recovered from the pool, lay on the table like a reminder of humiliation. The door opened slowly, revealing Olivia. She wore a beige-tailored suit, her straight brown hair down, her light makeup suggesting innocence. She carried a tray with tea and fruit. "Good morning, Margaret. I brought something to help you feel stronger." "I know last night was rough." Margaret lifted her chin, maintaining her posture. "You didn't need to. I'm fine." "I know you're strong," Olivia replied, setting the tray down gently. "But everyone's still talking about the incident. The press is already looking for cracks. I'm afraid someone might use this moment to expose the family." Margaret narrowed her eyes. "Expose? No one has a reason to—" "It was an accident." Olivia slowly stepped closer, resting a hand on the back of the chair. Her voice came out low, almost motherly. "Is that how everyone sees it? Last night, I noticed how Naomi was watching. She was close, very close, and she seemed eager to say something." Margaret's heart sped up. "Naomi? No, she would never do anything against me." Olivia kept her tone calm but planted thorns with precision. "Margaret, I admire Naomi. She's smart, accomplished, but the business world can be cruel. The press loves her, investors follow her, and sometimes people like that find opportunity in family tragedy. Imagine the headline, 'Tech entrepreneur witnessed scandal in the Whitmore family.' She knows the impact that would have." "You're suggesting Naomi wants to use this against us?" Margaret asked, her voice faltering. Olivia gently placed her hand over Margaret's. "I don't want to believe that, but we have to be realistic. Even you felt that Naomi doesn't quite fit the family's traditions. She's always been different. Maybe she holds on to resentments we never saw." Margaret took a deep breath, her fingers brushing the damp pearls on the table. "She's always been respectful, different, yes, but loyal. And yet, look at the timing," Olivia said, leaning closer, her brown eyes locked onto her mother-in-law's. "She was the only one besides me near the pool. And she didn't hesitate to give interviews after the scare. You heard her, didn't you? She said something about family being a commitment. Those words sound nice, but they can be taken as criticism. The outside world loves to flip the narrative." Silence filled the room. Margaret pulled her hand away from Olivia's, but not forcefully. She stared into the mirror, where she saw her own vulnerability reflected. The image of the fall came back, now clouded by her daughter-in-law's poisonous suggestion. "I don't know," Margaret murmured. Olivia took a deep breath, as if in sorrow. "I only want to protect you, Margaret, and protect Daniel. The family can't be destroyed by whispers. Trust me, let's keep Naomi close, but carefully. That way, if she tries anything, we'll be ready. Margaret, vulnerable, let slip." "You might be right." Olivia smiled, a controlled smile that seemed like pity but hid triumph. "Don't worry, I'll take care of it." She stood up, adjusted her blazer, and left the room, posture straight, step steady. When the door closed, Margaret touched the pearl necklace again. Her gaze was distant, but for the first time, a shadow of doubt fell on the niece who had helped her so many times. And in the hallway, Olivia stopped in front of a window lit by the morning sun. She brushed a strand of hair from her face and whispered to herself, "A divided family is easier to control." If you made it this far, comment trust. That way I'll know you're following the story, and we'll leave those who only read the comments totally confused. A light rain fell over Atlanta that night as Naomi, now far from the Whitmore mansion, crossed the lobby of her modern downtown apartment. The space reflected her life, minimalist lines, walls covered in works by contemporary black artists, and a shelf filled with awards and innovation certificates. But that night, none of her career's brilliance could silence the unrest gnawing inside her. Her phone buzzed constantly with news alerts about the accident at the party, but she ignored them. She needed answers that weren't in the headlines. She opened a dark wooden box stored in the back of her closet. It was an inheritance from her adoptive mother, who had died years earlier, Margaret's sister. Inside were yellowed papers, letters, old contracts. Naomi took a deep breath before sitting on the living room floor, surrounded by the documents. Among newspaper clippings and hotel memos, she found contracts dated from the late 1970s. The Whitmore name appeared repeatedly. There were clauses that made her shiver, explicit refusals to host certain client profiles, silent agreements to exclude minorities from business meetings, and even more disturbing, records of political donations exchanged for preferential licenses to build resorts. "My God," Naomi murmured, running her fingers over the papers. The family fortune was built on exclusion. She picked up a letter dated 1982, signed by a former Whitmore partner. The handwriting was cold. "As long as we maintain a selective standard, our traditional clientele will remain loyal. Opening up to other audiences could ruin the group's reputation." Naomi's heart pounded. Every line was an open wound in the country's collective memory. "And they still made me feel like an outsider in this family," she said softly, anger restrained. "While this whole empire was built by shutting out people like me." The tears came, but they weren't from weakness. They were from outrage. She stood and walked to the window, staring out at the lights of the city that never slept. "If this comes out," she said aloud, "the family won't survive. The image they protect with parties and speeches will shatter." At that moment, her phone rang. It was Sophia, the young employee from the party. Her voice sounded frightened. "Miss Carter, please don't say my name, but I have to tell you. I heard Olivia on the phone with someone after the fall. She said everything was under control, that Margaret was already starting to doubt you. I think she's setting something up." Naomi closed her eyes, breathing deeply. "Thank you for trusting me, Sophia. Stay silent for now." Trust that I will protect you." After hanging up, she returned to the table and pulled out a leather folder, placing the most damning documents inside. Her fingers trembled as she flipped through the most cruel contract again, the one that read, "Tradition is what guarantees our supremacy." She whispered to herself, almost like a vow, "Their tradition is the shame I will expose." But at the same time, she knew that revealing these secrets could destroy Margaret, who was now recovering in a fragile state, and Daniel, who was trying to lead the business with more ethics. Naomi felt the weight of the choice, justice or destruction. As she closed the folder, she heard her own voice echo in the silent room. "Maybe I'm the only one who can rewrite this story." The camera, if this were a soap opera, would zoom in on the metal clasp she had taken from the mansion, now resting on top of the old papers, like a symbol of two distinct but connected secrets. Naomi raised her tear-filled eyes and, in a firm whisper, promised, "They will hear me. Even if it cost me everything." The next morning brought more than sunshine to Atlanta. It brought headlines. Naomi woke to the relentless sound of notifications on her phone. Sitting on the edge of the bed, her heart raced as she saw the first news alerts. Business websites were headlined, "Tech entrepreneur allegedly used Whitmore influence to build empire." Other outlets questioned, "Naomi Carter, independence or family favoritism?" She clicked on one of the articles. It cited sources close to the family and implied that her company's early contracts were only secured because Naomi was related to Daniel Whitmore, heir to the hotel chain. The cruel detail. There was no proof, just carefully stitched together assumptions meant to sound plausible. Naomi let the phone fall onto the comforter, her fingers trembling. "No, this can't be," she murmured, her voice cracking. She stood and walked to the living room, where the TV, tuned to a business channel, repeated the same headlines. A commentator said, "She's always been seen as a symbol of independence, but now the question is Naomi Carter really who she seems to be?" The intercom rang. It was David, her press advisor, a middle-aged man with gray hair, always loyal and direct. He entered in a rush, folders in hand. "Naomi, we need to act fast." 3 investors already asked for explanations. One is threatening to freeze funding if we don't make a statement immediately. "A statement?" Naomi paced the room, her body tense. "How do I make a statement about a lie? They know how hard I fought to build my company without asking the family for anything." "They know? But the market doesn't forgive doubt." David looked her in the eye. "It's Olivia. It has to be. These close sources are coming from inside the mansion." Naomi clenched her fists. "She's painting me as an opportunist, when I've always been treated like a stranger in that house." Meanwhile, at the Whitmore mansion, Olivia sipped tea on the terrace, calmly flipping through a magazine. Margaret approached, still fragile from the fall, but elegant in a light blue linen dress. "Have you seen the news?" "They're talking about Naomi." Olivia looked up with a rehearsed expression of surprise. "Yes, I saw. How sad. I always feared that this confusion between business and family would surface. Maybe she took advantage without realizing. Sometimes ambition blinds us." Margaret sighed, conflicted. She always seemed determined to me, not self-serving. Olivia set down her teacup, her voice gentle. Determined, yes. But wasn't there also a desire to prove something? "Think, Margaret. She's always wanted recognition. Maybe that desire led her to use the connection with your family. And now, the press found her." The words seeped in like slow poison. Margaret touched her pearl necklace, distressed. If it's true, the whole family will be dragged down. That's why we need to protect ourselves, Olivia said with a compassionate, almost pitiful look. I'll take care of it, for all of us. While Olivia solidified her plot, Naomi stood before a packed room. She had gathered her team and investors for an impromptu press conference. The camera flashes were blinding, but her stance was steady, even though inside, she was breaking. My journey was built through hard work, sleepless nights, and calculated risks, she declared. I never needed the Whitmore fortune to prove my worth. I'm here because I believe in creating opportunities, not inheriting them. A reporter stood up, pointed. And how do you explain the early contracts with suppliers linked to the Whitmore group? The air felt thin. Naomi took a deep breath. Let me ask you this. If a company is solid and innovative, should it reject clients just because there are family connections? That's not favoritism. That's merit. The questions kept coming, sharp. Naomi answered every one, but it felt like swimming against an invisible current. At the end of the conference, David pulled her aside. You were brilliant, but I don't know if it'll be enough. They want blood. Naomi looked at the journalists packing up, at the flashes still burning in her mind. If they want blood, then they'll have to watch me bleed standing. Back at the mansion, Olivia watched the press conference on TV, a faint smile forming on her lips. This is just the beginning, Naomi, she whispered, satisfied. That night, alone in her apartment, Naomi stared at the old documents that revealed the family's dark secrets. The contrast was cruel. She held the truth, but the world believed the lie. With tears held back, she squeezed the metal clasp of the bracelet in her hand and whispered softly, They have no idea who they're dealing with. The night in Atlanta was muggy when Naomi got the call from Daniel asking to meet. His voice sounded urgent, almost harsh. Without hesitation, she agreed. Soon after, his black car pulled up in front of Naomi's building. He stepped out still in a suit, tie loosened, face marked by exhaustion, and the nonstop headlines chasing him since the party. In the modern apartment, with windows overlooking the city lights, the silence between them was heavier than any word. Daniel walked over to the table, where scattered papers lay. The same old documents Naomi had reviewed days before, now covered by a closed leather folder. Naomi, Daniel began, voice low but steady. Things are out of control. Investors are pressuring me. The media won't leave my name alone. And all of it revolves around you. Naomi crossed her arms, body upright though her heart burned. Around me, or around what Olivia's been spreading about me. Daniel stepped closer, his blue eyes hardened. You keep saying she's manipulating me, but where's the proof? Where's the evidence Olivia's guilty? Because so far, all I see is you accusing without showing anything. The pain stabbed Naomi's chest like a knife. You're asking me for proof, Daniel. You've known me since we were kids. You know how hard I've fought. You know I never took favors from this family. I know what we've been through together, he said, his voice faltering for a moment. But I also know my marriage is on the line. Olivia swears she only wants to protect my mother and the family name. And without proof from you, how am I supposed to believe otherwise? Naomi stepped forward, her eyes glassy but full of resolve. You want proof? I have it. Old documents, contracts showing the Whitmore fortune was built on discrimination and shady alliances. And if I want, I can tear down this whole mask of tradition you parade to the world. Daniel stood stunned, shoulders tense. You're threatening to expose the family. No. She raised her chin, every word etched in stone. I'm saying I could, but I haven't. Because despite everything, I still believe you can open your eyes on your own. You ask me for proof about Olivia, but you ignore the proof right in front of you. She manipulates your mother, manipulates you, manipulates the press. The silence stretched, broken only by the distant hum of city traffic. Daniel ran a hand over his face, torn. I don't know who to believe. Naomi felt the tears burn, but she didn't let them fall. If after everything we've been through, you still need to choose between me and her, choose her. But remember, one day, you'll realize who was truly by your side. She grabbed the leather folder firmly, locked it in a drawer, and walked past him toward the door. Good night, Daniel. Take care of your mother. Because if it's up to your wife, Margaret won't have much time left. Daniel instinctively grabbed her arm, but Naomi turned and finished, her voice stronger than ever. Don't ask me for trust, mon Daniel, if you can't give me yours. She left, leaving a heavy silence behind. Daniel stood frozen in the middle of the room, his mind spinning. The conflict within him deepened. On one side, the wife who always knew what to say. On the other, the adopted cousin who never needed anyone to build her story. For the first time, he started to doubt that Olivia was the honest woman she claimed to be. If you made it this far, comment trust. That way, I'll know you're following the story and will confuse the ones who only read the comments. Naomi spent days immersed in silence, not the silence of defeat, but of someone planning a counterattack. In her glass-walled office, surrounded by screens and reports, she gathered her communications team and closest partners. Their faces showed concern, but their eyes stayed fixed on her with respect. Naomi took a deep breath and said, They want to paint me as a shadow of the Whitmores, but I'll show them I shine on my own. This isn't about pride, it's about truth. David, her advisor, opened a folder of data. We have solid numbers. Your company's first contracts had no ties to the hotel group. They were with small startups, independent investors. If we show that, we can dismantle Olivia's narrative. Then let's show it, Naomi replied, lifting her chin. But not just in reports. Let's go to the media, to the people. I want everyone to know who I am and what I built. In the following days, strategic interviews appeared in business magazines and tech channels. Naomi spoke firmly, highlighting her background, her sacrifices, the doors slammed in her face, and how she carved her path through merit. A TV show aired old footage of her speaking at small conferences, long before any public link to the Whitmores. The narrative began to shift. In the midst of this process, an unexpected call surprised her. Senator Charles Walker, a respected figure in the American South, reached out. Naomi, your story is inspiring. We want you as the keynote speaker at this month's Innovation and Business Ethics Conference in Atlanta. It'll be broadcast nationwide. She felt the weight of the invitation. It would be her chance to reclaim, in front of everyone, the voice they tried to silence. I accept, Senator, but know this. I won't just talk about innovation. I'm going to talk about integrity. The big day arrived. The auditorium was packed with business leaders, politicians, journalists, and young dreamers. On stage, a giant screen displayed the title, The Future of Responsible Business. Naomi stepped out to subdued applause, wearing an elegant white dress, a symbol of purity and resilience. But in the audience, strategically seated, was Olivia, in a flawless red suit, with a calm and triumphant expression. Margaret was there too, beside Daniel, both attentive, both silently carrying inner doubts. Naomi began her speech in a calm voice. My life has always been about facing closed doors. Not because I lacked skill, but because people insisted on reminding me where I came from, not what I could build. The room quieted, fully engaged. I've been accused of riding on the Whitmore fortune. But the truth is, when I started, that last name didn't open doors. It closed them. I had to prove every day that I wasn't just an extension of a wealthy family. She projected her company's early contracts onto the screen, showing they came from small, independent investors, far from any hotel group influence. These were my first partners, people who believed in me when no one else did. Where were the Whitmores then? In their ballrooms? While I worked through the night. A murmur ran through the crowd. Olivia, still motionless, held her smile. Naomi then looked directly at where her cousin-in-law sat. And now, when my journey has finally gained recognition, they tried to stain my name with lies. But the truth is patient. It always finds a way to rise. Daniel looked away, uncomfortable. Margaret clutched her hands in her lap. Olivia stood up mid-speech, drawing attention. Naomi, your speech is lovely, but we all know the Whitmore name has always been part of your story. No one here believes you didn't benefit from it, even if indirectly. The room fell silent. Naomi took a deep breath and responded, "You're right, Olivia. The name has always been there. There as a shadow, as a burden, as a constant reminder that I wasn't true blood. But if anyone here thinks that's a privilege, I invite them to live one day in my shoes, proving their worth at every step, just to be tolerated." The crowd erupted in applause, not for an attack, but for the strength of her truth. Olivia tried to keep her composure, but the contradiction was clear. If Naomi had benefited, why had she needed to fight so hard just to be accepted? Leaving the stage, journalists swarmed Naomi, asking for statements. She simply said, "I'm not here to destroy a family. I'm here to remind everyone that no lie can erase the truth of a lifetime of work." Olivia, in front of the cameras, chose to remain silent. Her silence was read as weakness. Margaret, for the first time, felt a deep doubt. Perhaps she had misjudged her niece. And Daniel, still torn, carried in his eyes the confusion of a man beginning to see cracks in his marriage. The Whitmore mansion was silent that night, so silent that every step echoed like a memory from another time. Margaret walked the halls in a burgundy silk robe, her hands still trembling after watching Naomi's speech on television. Her niece's words rang in her head like hammer strikes. Shadow, burden, tolerated. Those phrases wouldn't leave the matriarch's heart, and she wondered when she had started to see Naomi more as a threat than as family. Tired, she decided to get a book from the house library, the one place that still brought her comfort. As she opened the heavy door, she heard voices inside, muffled. Margaret froze. She immediately recognized Olivia's voice. Slowly, she moved closer and realized her daughter-in-law was on the phone, facing away, thinking she was alone. "Yes, of course it was me who pushed her," Olivia said in a low but firm tone, with none of the sweetness she used around the family. No one saw, at least no one with the guts to speak up. Naomi was there, but who's going to believe her? I spent months setting this up. Margaret already distrusts her niece more than me. It was easy. Margaret raised a hand to her mouth, stifling a gasp. Her body shook as if the cold pool water had swallowed her all over again. "And the press?" Olivia continued. "Don't worry. We've already leaked enough to ruin Naomi. Her image as an independent entrepreneur is stained. Daniel believes me, of course. He always has. And Margaret, too. The old woman would rather find fault in her niece than admit she made a mistake letting someone from the outside in. The words struck Margaret like daggers. Ashamed, she leaned against a bookshelf, the weight of the truth buckling her legs. Tears fell quietly but heavy with regret. I never wanted to believe Naomi, she murmured to herself, her voice breaking. I chose to feed my prejudice. I'm the one who left her alone. Olivia ended the call, smoothed her hair in the library mirror, and sighed with satisfaction. But when she turned around, she came face to face with Margaret standing in the shadows, eyes glassy and stern. The silence that followed felt heavy enough to crush the walls. Margaret, Olivia said, surprised, trying to recover her smile. I was just… Don't bother, Olivia. Margaret's voice came out firm, though shaken by pain. I heard everything, every word. Olivia paled. You don't understand, I was only protecting the family. Margaret stepped closer, upright despite her devastation. Protecting? You almost killed me. And you destroyed Naomi's honor. Naomi, who's done nothing but fight with dignity. And I was blind. The matriarch turned, gripping her robe like armor. The worst blindness wasn't not seeing what you were doing. It was refusing to see who Naomi really is. And the reason is that deep down, I never accepted that she didn't have the same blood, the same color. The confession hung in the air. Margaret took a deep breath, trying to keep from crying. But that ends now. Olivia tried to step closer. You're not going to expose me. Think about the family. Think about Daniel. Margaret cut her off with a sharp glare. Don't say another word. Tomorrow, you'll answer to everyone. And I will tell Naomi myself how deeply I failed her. She walked out of the library, her steps firm in the hallway. Olivia was left alone, her pale face reflected in the mirror. What was once confidence had turned into real fear. For the first time, she had lost control. In her room, Margaret closed the door and broke down in tears. The weight of shame was immense, but along with it came an unshakable resolve. I judged her as an outsider, and I'm the one who didn't deserve to stand beside her. The matriarch looked into the full-length mirror. There was pain, there was guilt, but also the spark of a woman ready to right a historical wrong. The next morning brought a weight that hung over the Whitmore mansion like a storm cloud. Margaret, resolute after the previous night's revelation, called Daniel to her room. He entered still confused, but found his mother sitting in her favorite armchair, her face serious, her voice steady. Daniel, we need to talk about Olivia. There's no room left for doubt. She then recounted, in detail, everything she had heard. The phone call, the confession, Olivia's cold admission that she had pushed her and manipulated the press against Naomi. Daniel listened in silence, his expression hardening with every word. At the end, his voice was barely above a whisper. My God, I've been standing by a lie this whole time. Naomi was called, and together they made a decision. The truth had to go public. A private confrontation wouldn't be enough. Naomi's honor and the reputation of the Whitmore group were on the line. So, they organized a press conference in the grand ballroom of one of the family's hotels, in front of journalists and cameras from across the country. On stage were Margaret, Daniel, and Naomi, side by side. Olivia, forced to attend, walked in with an upright posture and a trained smile. But the spark of confidence was gone from her brown eyes. She wore a gray suit, as if trying to project seriousness, but every movement betrayed her unease. Margaret spoke first, her voice full of emotion. For a long time, I was wrong. I chose to distrust someone who had always treated me with respect, instead of seeing the evil right in front of me. Today, I want to publicly ask my niece Naomi for forgiveness, and to tell everyone that the true person responsible for the scandal in our family was not her. A stir spread through the room. Olivia held her smile, but her body tensed. Then Daniel stepped up to the microphone. My wife, Olivia Harper Whitmore, not only spread false information about Naomi, but also confessed, in front of a witness, to being responsible for the incident in which my mother nearly lost her life. Shock rippled through the audience. Reporters stood up, cameras zoomed in, flashes lit up Olivia's face. "That's a lie," she shouted, trying to keep her composure. "You're all against me because you can't stand seeing a strong woman next to a powerful man." Naomi, who had remained silent until then, slowly approached the mic. Her eyes locked onto Olivia's. "Strength is not about tearing others down to stay on top. Strength is fighting with truth, even when the whole world doubts you." I was humiliated, accused, but today, everyone sees who the real shadow in this family is. Olivia was breathing heavily, surrounded by cameras capturing every detail of her unraveling. "You won't destroy me. I still have powerful friends. I still have influence." That's when Margaret stood up and declared, with a firmness that silenced the room, "You no longer carry our name. You no longer have this home." And Daniel, her son, looked at her, and without hesitation, turned to Olivia. "The divorce will be immediate. There is no marriage without trust. And you killed that the moment you touched my mother." The words hit Olivia like a sentence. She tried to fight back, but the noise of reporters and Daniel's hard stare shut her down. Hours later, images showed her leaving the mansion in a simple car, far from the bodyguards and glamour that once surrounded her. She carried only one suitcase, her face marked by anger and humiliation. Before getting into the vehicle, she looked back and muttered to herself, "This isn't over. They'll pay for this." But the truth was undeniable. Olivia was now nothing more than a shadow of who she used to be. If you made it this far, comment "justice." That way I'll know you're following the story and will confuse the ones who only read the comments. The Whitmore mansion felt different. After Olivia's public downfall, the silence was no longer one of fear, but of a house that needed to learn how to breathe again. Margaret, sitting on the veranda with a blanket over her shoulders, waited for Naomi to arrive. The sunset painted the sky in golden and orange hues, and for the first time in many years, the matriarch looked fragile without hiding behind her usual rigidity. When Naomi entered, standing tall with a calm gaze, Margaret slowly got up. The air filled with emotion. The matriarch took a deep breath, her voice choked. "Naomi, I don't even know where to begin. I spent years telling myself I was protecting the family, but deep down, I was protecting a prejudice I inherited and never had the courage to confront. I made you feel like an outsider. I doubted you when you needed my trust the most. And now I see the one who failed the family was me." Tears streamed down Margaret's face. Naomi stepped closer, slowly. The silence was so dense that the sound of leaves rustling in the wind could be heard. Then, with a voice firm yet filled with emotion, Naomi replied, "You don't need to justify yourself, Margaret. What you did hurt, yes. But the deepest pain I carry is knowing there are still many people going through the same. I don't want revenge. I'm not going to expose the family's old secrets. I'd rather transform that legacy into something new." Margaret held her hands with a grip that mixed regret and hope. "I don't deserve your forgiveness, but if you give it to me, I promise the Whitmore name will no longer be remembered for exclusion. I want it to be remembered for change." At that moment, Daniel stepped onto the terrace, His eyes moved between his mother and Naomi. He walked over and said, "I failed too. I let Olivia blind me. But I don't want to repeat the mistakes of the past. Naomi, we're not enemies. I want to be your ally, to rebuild everything the right way." Naomi looked at him with determination, and a faint smile appeared on her lips. "Daniel, you and I don't need to be lovers to prove our bond. We're family, and true family isn't made of blood or convenience. It's made of courage, loyalty, and truth." The three stood together, watching the sunset wash over the city. The camera, if this were a drama series, would slowly pull back, revealing the mansion, once a symbol of cold opulence, now becoming the setting of a new promise. In the months that followed, Naomi took on part of the leadership of the Whitmore group. The discriminatory contracts of the past were torn up in front of the board. Inclusion programs and support for minority entrepreneurs were announced. The media, which had once tried to tear her down, now ran headlines like "Whitmore Hotels, from tainted tradition to symbol of transformation." Margaret, now more aged, appeared alongside Naomi in interviews, unafraid to admit the past. "I can't erase the mistakes," she said, "but I can use the voice I still have to make sure they're never repeated." And in front of a crowd at a major business event, Naomi declared with strength, "The true power of a family isn't in blood or money. It's in the courage to change. It's in rebuilding, justly and respectfully, what the past has broken." The audience rose to their feet in applause. Margaret cried quietly. And Daniel, standing beside his cousin, knew that the Whitmore story would no longer be written by privilege or lies, but by a new dynasty built on different values. In the final scene, Naomi looks into the camera with a serene and steady expression. The sunlight reflects off her face, and her voice echoes as a final message. Legacy isn't what we receive. It's what we choose to leave behind for those who come after us. So, what did you think of this story full of emotion, twists, and resilience? I really want to hear your opinion. Drop a rating from 0 to 10 in the comments to let me know how much you enjoyed it. And if you liked it, don't forget to leave a like, share it with someone who also loves a good story, and subscribe to the channel to catch the next ones. And before you go, I've picked out another story that's even more moving and will truly touch your heart.